Hi, I'm Mercedes, and for today's segment, I'm going to show you how to take something old from your closet and recycle it into something brand new for you. So for all of you sewing fashionistas and all of you crafting fashionistas out there, I truly hope that you enjoyed this segment. So let's get started. I like to think of it as the art of reinvention. So for today's segment, we're going to take a t-shirt and we're actually going to recycle it into a headscarf. Now, there's actually nothing wrong with this t-shirt, but if you have an old cotton shirt or possibly some fabric scraps, this would be a great time to recycle it. Now, the only reason that I'm using this t-shirt is that it was actually purchased in the wrong size, but I have always enjoyed the back graphic. It talks about unity and peace, and it's just one of my wishes for the world today. And I would like to showcase this on my headscarf. So the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is that we're going to cut it out of its original frame. Now I'm going to put this to the side, because what do I mean by its original frame? Well, I actually have one done, and what that means is that we're going to cut it out to be as close as possible to its original pattern. So we're going to take our fabric scissors, and we're actually going to cut at the side seam, the armhole, the shoulder seam, and the neckline. Wouldn't worry too much about that bottom hem, and please don't throw away any of the scraps because we're going to be recycling that in a few minutes. Now, once you're done with that, you will end up with the front panel, back panel, the sleeves, and the collar. So you're going to put this to the side because we'll be working with this in a little bit. And now you're getting ready to do your paper pattern. Well, here's another opportunity for you to be kind to your environment. Maybe you have some old gift wrapping paper or some old tissue paper. This would be a great time to recycle it. Now, I wouldn't suggest cardboard because we are going to be using straight pins, and I don't want you to hurt your fingers. So now you're going to take your pencil, and you're going to measure 18 inches from side to side and 10 inches from top to bottom. Now, initially you will see a triangle pattern, but please don't cut that out just yet. I'm going to ask you to take your ruler, and I'm going to ask you to measure 1/2 inch, and what we're going to create here is an end tab. Now, you will be seeing a slight curve, and that's exactly what we need because we are going to be inserting drawstrings in a few minutes, and it's actually going to make our headscarf a little bit more comfortable to wear. Now, just make a slight notation that we will be cutting 2 pieces out of this headscarf pattern. So we're going to put this to the side, and if you've missed any of the specs today or any of the instructions, I invite you to visit us at www.m721organics.com, and on the home page you'll be able to get a free download of the paper pattern as well as all the instructions today. Well, now we're getting ready to do our drawstring pattern. So I'm going to ask you to take your pencil, and I'm going to ask you to measure 16 inches from side to side and just 3/4 of an inch in width. Now, it's really up to you if you want to give yourself a little bit more leeway. Just add an extra 1/4 inch seam allowance on the top and the bottom. It'll actually make it a little bit more easier for yourself to construct the drawstrings. Now remember, this is your time for your creativity and for your imagination. I'm just here as the guide. And again, make a small notation for yourself that we will be cutting 2 pieces of the drawstring in a few minutes. So now you have your paper pattern, and now you're going to take your panel. I'm actually going to use the scrap front panel to show you that we're getting ready to lay our paper pattern. Now, as you see, I'm laying it on the graphic that I'd like to use, and I end up noticing that the paper pattern is actually extending over the armhole. Well, if we would have done some pre-planning, we actually could have left the sleeve attached, and we could have incorporated that seam into our design. But since we didn't do that today, I'm going to continue rotating my pattern, and I actually discover that the way that I would like to showcase this graphic is on the diagonal. Well, the only thing that that means is just that the paper pattern is placed on the bias, and my suggestion is that if you're going to be cutting your first pattern on the bias, please cut the second one on the bias as well. It's going to avoid one of the pieces being slightly larger. And don't forget about those 2 pieces of drawstring. Well, once that's cut out, I actually have one that is semi-constructed. Now there are two options that you can put this project together. You can actually sew it or you can actually craft it. Now if you have selected the sewing option, then I would ask you to stitch along the side and also at the bottom. But please do not close those end tabs because we're getting ready to insert those drawstrings. Now if you're doing the crafting side of this project, then I would ask you to have some stitch witchery available. Now I'm an actual new crafter and I've just discovered this product, and I know it's been around for 100 years. So if you're a new crafter as well and you still have some questions about it, again, please visit www.m721organics.com and there's some handy links that could help you out as well. Now if you're an avid crafter, I'm sure you either have this in your craft box or you possibly have some other type of fabric bonding agent. And that's what that is. It's just a fabric bonding agent. So I'm going to put this to the side, and here's a great time to get some of those scraps into play. And again, when you purchase your stitch witchery or any fabric bonding agent, please read the instructions. The stitch witchery that I ended up purchasing calls for a damp cloth. Well, I truly have a little bit of patience, and I tried to do this with a dry cloth, and I gotta tell you something, it doesn't stick. Well, my instructions also call for a wool setting. So here I am, I'm applying this hot iron. If you see a little steam, don't worry about it, it's just the hot iron hitting that damp cloth. And I'm gonna take this out, and what do I see? That it's actually starting to bond, but only on one side and not the other. That's okay. It's just showing us that we have to continue applying pressure and continue ironing until the two pieces bond together. Now if you're 14 years of age or a little bit younger, I would strongly suggest that if you want to do this project, that you actually call your mom or possibly another supervising adult, because we are using a hot iron and we are using fabric bonding agents. And although it's wonderful to do something great for your environment and create something for yourself as well, it's also important to think of safety first. Okay? Maybe turn it into a family project. So now I'm putting the towel aside, and what do I discover? That my two pieces of fabric are actually bonded together. I find it very exciting. Okay, so now we're getting ready to move on to the drawstring. So I'm going to set this aside. And what did I discover? That the stitch witchery that I purchased is actually the same exact width as my drawstring. Well, it actually started becoming a little uncomfortable to put it together. But you can take your paper scissors and cut this gently. And all it's going to do is that it's going to create a smaller width in taping, and it'll actually be more comfortable for you to assemble your drawstring. So at the end of that, you're going to end up with two spaghetti-like drawstrings. Now again, you could end up possibly using end cords that you used for another craft project, or possibly some beads. This is your time for your creativity. Now we're getting ready to insert our drawstring. Now, if you only used one ply, don't worry about that either. You can use your fabric scissors and just do one small slit and put your drawstring through it. Use either a decorative button or a bead, and you could hand sew that, and it'll still give you the type of security when you do your self ties. Now here we are. Although this is open, please remember that you will be stitching this closed. If you're using 2 plies of fabric, please make sure that you carefully insert your drawstring, one at each end, and now's the time to actually stitch this together. If you're stitching, you could definitely use a reverse stitch or a decorative stitch, and if you're using the crafting side of this, I would suggest to possibly cut maybe 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch of stitch witchery, and Carefully insert it at the end tab and continue to apply pressure until the fabric actually has adhered. And that's it. You have just recycled one of your old shirts and have turned it into a headscarf and something brand new for you. So I truly hope that you have enjoyed this segment today and that you'll join us again for some more recycling projects. So please remember to continue to recycle. Please remember to continue to reinvent and continue to recreate you, because you're worth it. Thanks again for joining me today, and I hope to see you again real soon. Take care.